there was this, you can say, an inner voice, Antaratma ki awaaz, you may call it, that said, I want to do something that contributes to nation buildings. The core thesis at Samagra is better governance as a lever to create large-scale impact. One of the biggest strengths of an entrepreneur is staying power. Tagline that we always had at Samagra, which we repeat internally, is that राष्ट्र निर्माण के यज्ञ में हमारी भी एक आहुति होनी चाहिए. न हार में न जीत में, किंचित नहीं भयभीत में, संघर्ष पथ पर जो भी मिला, ये भी सही, वो भी सही.
I want everyone and all the young people particularly to watch this interview, and I'll tell you why. Because after IIT, first we have changed to go to IIT and then go to IIM, and most of us have grown up in India where the definition of success is कि IIT crack किए, IIM crack किए, उसके बाद बड़े consulting firm में गए, और उसके बाद you get a very good high paying job. But to me, the person I'm going to be talking today has redefined the definition of success and created a new model, a new framework, a new goalpost, which we all can, learn from, which we all can, and then through his journey reflect on in our own journeys कि क्या करना चाहिए और क्या होता है, वो success का मापदंड क्या होता है. Today I'm going to be talking to Gaurav Goel. He's the founder of Samagra. It's a governance consulting firm. It's an Indian governance consulting firm. He started this 10 years back. He is from IIT. He's from IIM. He went into consulting, but very, very early on left all that to pursue, which I, would say, a road less traveled. And he's lived that phenomenally, made such huge impact at ground level, और खुद के बलबूते पे ये किया है. कैसे किया, क्यों किया, and how did he choose this path? Let's hear from him and let's reflect and figure out कि हम क्या कर सकते हैं different through his journey. Gaurav, very nice to have you here.
Pleasure to be on your story, Shradha.
So first, as I was saying, I would, really want you to begin by telling us about your journey, because to me it's very interesting. कि बहुत जल्दी, जब तक स्टार्टअप भी ऐसा नहीं था कि स्टार्टअप करना है, you chose a very different path. Tell us about Samagra. How did you start? और ये 10 साल का जो जर्नी किया है.
So I think the first time what I call the कीड़ा for impact or the bug for impact became a conscious thought in the mind was during the IIT days. तभी सबसे पहले सोचा कि लाइफ में करना क्या है, what do I want to really do with my life. There was this, you can say, an inner voice, Antaratma ki awaaz, you may call it, that said, I want to do something that contributes to nation building, something that helps create impact at scale. That was the operating phrase in the head. Now, where was that voice coming from? Very difficult to say. I think somewhere the seed must have been sown in childhood. I saw my father being very socially active and so on. Maybe there, I used to read a lot of poems of Atal Bihari Vajpayee, listen to his speeches. That was an inspiration. So somewhere the seed was there, but that was the inner voice. And secondly, I used to have a constructed theory at the time, which I still hold to today, which is that when you're studying at an IIT, you're studying at taxpayers' money, right? So in some sense, if you were to look at it, the people of the country are investing in you as an individual through IIT and an institution. And this is not very different from how, let's say, shareholders invest in a company. And then they have an expectation of returns which are multiple times over. So somewhere there's an unsaid expectation, a hope, a trust that people are posing to say you contribute back, you will give back to society. And if you do anything which is just focused on you, which takes care of you, your family and all, I think is somewhere betraying that trust. So that sense of responsibility was there, this inner voice was there, but I didn't know how to go about creating impact at scale. So I said, okay, let me continue on the assembly line. And in the process, I'll pick up some skills, kuch aana chahiye pehle before you start kind of doing something. And also in the process, figure out how I want to really contribute. So I went to do my MBA, joined McKinsey from campus. That was a conscious choice because I felt consulting will provide that very transferable skill set early on in the career.
So you must be good in your studies also. McKinsey is day zero placement.
Yeah, so that was fine. That part was fairly sorted, I can say. McKinsey was a very good experience. Got to learn a lot, got a lot of exposure, opportunities, was doing fine. So everything was coming along well. But then I always say that just because a highway is good, you cannot continue to drive on it. And my destination was something else that was very much in the mind. I want to do something in the impact space. So firstly, I try to actually explore within McKinsey. Is there a career in impact that can be built within McKinsey? Because becoming an entrepreneur was not on my mind. Right? So it was creating impact. I didn't find a pathway within McKinsey to be able to do that. So I started traveling on weekends. I said, weekend pe travel karke, let me understand what's happening in this quote unquote impact domain. Started visiting organizations, seeing their work and so on. But it was almost impossible with that McKinsey lifestyle, right? So I said, okay, let me quit. So I put in my papers and then I extensively traveled for 6 months across the country. 3 चीजें करी मैंने उसमें. एक तो I made a list of some 25 organizations across education, health, livelihood, different domains of the development space, which I wanted to understand the work of, right? So I would meet their founders, meet their core teams, and then go to the field, stay there for a few days, understand how they're kind of... Train se travel. Most of it was 90% by train. Then second is I wanted to understand how wheels of governance move on the ground. Because growing up in Delhi, the only exposure you have to government is Delhi police, right? Uske beyond is nothing. So I said, I want to understand how the real India works. So I shadowed a whole set of district collectors, block officers, medical officers, Patwari, Nambardar, videos, all of them in different states, and really would shadow them to see how wheels of governance are moving.
I want to ask you here कि वो कैसे shadow करने allow दे दिए district collectors?
No, I didn't know anyone. So somehow through someone I got hold of one district collector. It was District Collector Bhopal, I remember. So I requested him, I want to spend 1 week with you. Just let that happen. He was very generous. And then through him, his batchmates, other kind of district collectors in Madhya Pradesh, his batchmates in other states, and that's how it happened. From one thing led to another. So that was the second thing, and the third was I made a list of MPs, 15 MPs who I felt were doing good work in their constituency basis, some net research, and I said, let me go and understand how they are kind of facilitating development in the region. So all of these 3 things put together took me to some 70 odd districts, 17 states in a compressed period of 6 months, and from there the idea of Samagra basically took a concrete shape. It was in the mind doing something with governments, doing something with the political governance system, but this made it concrete. The core thesis at Samagra is better governance as a lever to create large-scale impact.
You know, so again for everyone listening and watching you, basically बैग उठाया और 6 महीने तक रोड पे निकल गए. And from a McKinsey lifestyle to getting, taking the trains, staying in districts and I'm sure villages and shadowing people and learning. So that was your research and homework.
Yeah, that was my orientation, I would say. And it was one of the best decisions I took. I think that travel taught me a lot, huge amount of learning. It got me out of, you can say, the McKinsey bubble. Nothing, McKinsey is a great institution, but I'm saying it got me out of that corporate bubble, and it was a humbling experience, I'll say.
So Samagra ka birth kab hua?
So it was 2012, end of 2012, December.
After you made the travel?
This was in the middle of that travel.
Okay.
Yeah. So things were taking shape as I was traveling. So that's how it was. And working with government was a very conscious choice. If you generally talk to people, a lot of people want to stay away from the government, right? Why deal with the government? Why would you want to deal with the government?
And young people definitely.
Exactly. Right. So usme, the first thing on the mind was scale is important. Any impact has to be at scale. Why? Because the scale of the country is so huge. Anything subscale will not move the needle.
Yeah.
Right? You want to move the needle for the country, every impact has to be at scale. So scale was an imperative. And once scale is an imperative, somewhere government becomes an imperative. Because if you really look at it, nobody else, no other organization, no other institution has the kind of reach, access, especially to the underprivileged that the government has.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to figure out a way to work with the government. I remember at the time when I started off, all the models that I saw during my travels, Shradha, they were outstanding models. But why didn't I not join them and started working with them? Because I felt not many of them were designed for scale. They were designed in a fairly, no matter how well they do, they'll be operating at a certain limited scale. And people were very happy at the time to actually do their own thing and not engage with the government. But today, the narrative is very, very different. Everyone working in the impact space wants to work with the government. And the reason being, they figured out that that's the only way to scale up anything that they're doing. I think on that part of the puzzle, we got right early on, where we said, okay, our lever of change is to work with the government.
I think startup that you created 10 years back, Samagra, there should be a word for that also, because the kind of impact, and let's discuss that, like what Samagra does and the kind of impact you've been able to create, because वो definitely chart क्या कहते हैं, path less charted है ना. If you can tell us Samagra का starting point क्या था and where has it reached in the last 10 years?
Yeah. So I think we started off with a very different model, which was we used to work with MPs, members of parliament, MPs and MLAs, and support them with different aspects of constituency development. So जहाँ से भी वो elect हो रहे हैं, how do you facilitate development in that region? So we started working with MPs across party lines in 8 different states in the country. This was 2013, 14, part of 2015. A lot of learning, I would say, some impact because we were working up and close with the district administration at the ground level and we could see some impact. But the learning, the larger learning from that phase was two things. One, that given our aspiration of impact at scale, it is important for us to be working with the executive as opposed to working with the legislature. So legislature is the MPs and the MLAs, executive is the ministers and the bureaucracy. Given that ministers and the bureaucracy have the mandate to deliver development, it's important to be engaging with them as opposed to MPs, MLAs who have an oversight on the executive. That was one. Second big learning was state as a unit of change. So Government of India has an important role to play, which is an enabling role, right policies, right focus areas, budgets, in some cases, the right narrative. Districts, where we were earlier operating when we were working with MPs and MLAs, is largely implementation. State is where you can really conceptualize, design things, and at the same time have very direct control on implementation through the districts. And today we very strongly believe that if India has to develop, it has to be state by state by state. It's like a set of states kind of almost competing and cooperating to kind of move forward. So we pivoted in 2015 to our current model, where we work with the political and the bureaucratic leadership at the state level. So we are looking for a combination of a chief minister and a very empowered, competent bureaucrat who has the mandate from the chief minister to drive a particular reform agenda. So we work with them. What do we work on? We work on what we call deep system reforms that both deliver measurable outcomes at scale in that state while we are there, and also builds the capacity of the state to sustainably deliver those outcomes. And these are outcomes across school education, skilling, agriculture, employment linkages, service delivery, many different domains of governance. Right? So that's in a nutshell what we do. I can explain with an example.
I love if you can share an example.
Yeah. So one of the pieces of work that we did, this is from the state of Haryana, and so the government has many schemes and services right, that gets delivered to the citizen. Your pension, scholarship, domicile certificate, driving license, you name it. And you'll be actually amazed by how many of them are there.
And so how unaware we are about
them. And you can still afford to be unaware, but there are a lot of people who will benefit if they're aware of the schemes. Right? So the number is mind-boggling. In Haryana itself, there are some 550 plus schemes and services cutting across 36 government ministries and departments. The challenge is, firstly, awareness is very low. Even if somebody is aware, they don't know whether they are eligible for it or not. Even if they know that somehow, they don't know where to go and apply for these, right? Because something is available in your panchayat, something is available in your district level, something in your tehsil, something in the tough subdivision. It's a mesh. Even if you land up at the right place, the process is fairly complicated. I'm generalizing a little bit. The process used to be complicated, and you end up depending on a tout or an agent. And even if you apply, it becomes a black box to you what's happening to it after that. So that was the prevailing situation in Haryana. This I'm talking about 2016.
But was this intentionally designed? Was it the British legacy? ऐसा क्यों है कि nobody is aware of these schemes and it's so difficult to find them?
Definitely this historical thing. We've inherited our entire system from the British. System was designed for a very different purpose. It was designed to kind of keep a control on the population. It was designed to seek rent. Right? And post-independence, there are certain strengths of that system also. But I think we've just taken it forward with very minimal changes. We've not moved fast enough, changed fast enough, evolved fast enough to make it suited to the times. And therefore that legacy is there. And then there's a whole, I would say, a fundamental challenge of human resource when it comes inside the government, because your progress happens by tenure. You spend 2 years, you spend 5 years, you become this, you spend 10 years. It's not performance management like we know in the startup world. It just does not exist. So coming back to the example I was giving, so that was a prevailing situation on scheme delivery, and there was a discussion with the chief minister we were having in the state, and he said, can we completely overhaul this? Can we make it a hassle-free experience for our citizens to deal with the government? Now, how do you do that? So for that, a small team was set up in the chief minister's office. It's called the Digital Haryana Cell. A program was conceptualized called Antyodaya Saral. The theory of change was that we can make the experience of the citizen hassle-free. We can almost if not eliminate, reduce the interface with any government officials, right? If we can have a system of scheme and service delivery without that interface or with minimal interface, then things will get better. So we said, how will somebody apply for a scheme service? If you're tech savvy enough, you sit at home, apply online. Second is, we'll have this 6,000 village level entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs operating in villages, in wards in the cities, where you can go and in an assisted mode, give 20 rupees and get your apply for a particular scheme service, right? So that's the second way. And third, we'll have these designated Saral Kendras, 115 centers across the entire state, like visa kind of facilities where you come and in one roof you can apply for all 50 schemes and services. So 550 odd schemes and services. So that's how the entire thing was conceptualized. A lot of work on the technology front, because to make all of this happen, you cannot do it without technology.
Yeah.
Right? So we had to get all the 36 departments onto one platform, and we designed and kind of conceptualized an elegant solution for that. There was a lot of work on streamlining these physical touch points that I talked about. There was a lot of work on the accountability front. All the scheme services were notified into something called a Right to Service Act. So you have to deliver this in 10 days. You have to deliver this scheme or service in 5 days, in 15 days. Otherwise, it's a penalty almost on the government official who's kind of delayed it. Every officer or every administrative unit had a Saral score, which was their net performance on service delivery, on which reviews were happening. So all of these things happened over a period, I would say, 2.5 odd years.
Wow.
And which completely then significantly overhauled the situation. You'll ask me if it's 100% perfect now? No. But I think it's a significant improvement from where it was, where there's more awareness for scheme services. There's a helpline a citizen can call and understand what is the eligibility criteria, what documents are required, where can I go nearest, what's the nearest touch point where I can go and apply. You apply, it's a seamless process, very minimal documentary requirement. You get an SMS update at every step of the process. You can go online and like an Amazon or a Flipkart, track what the status of your scheme or service. Once it is delivered, then you get a feedback call where you rate the experience that you had with the government, and that goes back into that Saral score. So all of this system kind of exists.
So you
now.
did, Samagra did all of this.
So I would say we are the catalyst in all the work that we're doing. Shradha, it'll be very arrogant of us to say that we have done it. It's really the government which does the stuff. It's the massive government machinery which is at play. There's a political will. There's a bureaucratic champion. We are a catalyst. Yeah. Our role is that of a catalyst to kind of get things going, right? So we played a role of catalyst. I think the credit rightfully has to go to the Haryana government. The Haryana government got an award for this, the President's Award for this particular initiative. There's a Government of India ranking which ranks all the states on citizen-centric governance. Haryana is number 1 on that on account of this. So this is one example. I've given you a very cross-cutting example, Shradha. There are many domain-specific examples of work.
But you can replicate this in all states, no?
But the enabling situation is very important. Yes, technically yes, but you have to have the political will. You have to have a bureaucratic champion who's willing to who has the mandate from the Chief Minister, who wants to drive it. Then there has to be that appetite to sustain it over 2 years, to make this change happen. There will be pushback from the ground, which happened in this case also, because a lot of vested interests get affected by such things. So there has to be the will becomes important. So if that enabling situation is there, yes, it can be replicated.
So Samagra is the partner for all the states. Yeah. But this is such a high, tangible, real impact that you're creating with Samagra. What were some of the challenges that you faced? Because this right now sounds too good to be true.
So I think every entrepreneur goes through his or her share of tough times, really challenging. I don't think there's any entrepreneur journey without tough time. I had my share of those times. I think the toughest one was in the beginning. The first 2-3 years were not easy at all, because as I said at the time, we used to work with MPs. While we were having a lot of learning, we were creating some impact, but there was no revenue model had not been figured out, right? Because we wanted money in our fee in check, in white, quote unquote, right? MPs didn't have that. They used to tell us, we don't have even this much salary, what you're asking for, how do we like what you're doing, and we can do a lot together. But so it was, professionally, it was not a good. It was clear that model will not work. Personal finances were in a bad shape because I had quit McKinsey, didn't have too much savings at the time. Father had just retired. So for first 2-3 years, there was no family income at all. So we were just eating for our savings somehow. Personal front, things were not very good. So it that was a tough one. And all of it put together, mental well-being had taken a hit. Yeah. Right. So all of this put together, the feeling was that you've been pushed against a wall and being beaten from all sides. Right. That was a sense. I think one of the biggest strengths of an entrepreneur is staying power. Or you can call it perseverance. Yeah. I call it staying power. Yeah. If you just be at it, day in and day out, just keep chipping. Something gives in. Yeah. Right? Something gives in, and in my case, that staying power was coming from the fact that I had anchored the entire journey on impact, not on creating an organization, not on certainly not on making money or getting some fame, etc. None of that. It was clearly anchored on impact. Anything short of that, I'm sure I would have given up in that phase and said it's not
Your
worth it.
purpose was far deeper.
Yeah, exactly. And therefore, because anything else I'm saying, I would have given up and said it's not worth it. The pain is not worth it. But because it was anchored on impact, I think that helped me see through that. And then it took a couple of years, but things, as I'm saying, get better as you keep at it and you keep kind of chipping at it. So that was just one instance, and it keeps happening every few years.
समग्र में आज इतना impact you've been able to create, and again I want to go back that you've just completed this December 10 years of this journey. How was it to build a team?
That's the toughest part, and I would say so. One thing I strongly believe, Shradha, is that the challenges in this space are extremely complex. Just the sheer scale of them and the sheer kind of constraints in which you operate. It's a very, very challenging space. It's much more complex. If I to kind of make that statement, it's more complex than what you see in the private domain. Therefore, you need the best minds in the country to be working on this. So that's on one side what's required. What is the situation? I feel one of the challenges in the impact sector is there's not enough critical mass of top quality talent. So there are a lot of people who are passionate, who really have the right intent, want to create impact, but they're very few in number in terms of, and there's some outstanding people, really outstanding talented people, but they're not in large enough numbers, I believe. So it's a sectoral challenge, right? We cannot solve for everyone, but we said ki at least at Samagra we want to solve for ourselves and we want to demonstrate that it is indeed doable. So to be able to attract that best talent, you need a certain value proposition to be created. Now, what's that value proposition? At least in our case, of course, it's anchored on impact. That if you come and join Samagra, then you kind of really get to do high impact work. You contribute to nation building in the real sense and not in the PowerPoint sense. So that's one. Second, you get as steep a learning curve, if not higher, than what you will get in the best of corporates, because of the ownership that you get, because of the exposure that you get, because of the internal coaching, mentoring processes that we have, the steep learning curve. You have a fast growth trajectory that is very similar to what you will get in any startup, right? So performance based, you kind of can jump very, very quickly and so on. In different levels and very clearly defined tracks, which are also generally used to be absent in the impact space earlier. And the fourth one is when it comes to compensation, which is always the elephant in the room.
Yes.
That is 70-80% of what you will get in a best-in-class
You've been
corporate.
able to do that?
Now we have been able to. We had a conscious target and we have kind of now gotten there after many years of kind of changes and tweaks and all. So it's not 20-30%, which used to be the norm in the NGO space or the not-for-profit space, right?
Also.
Yeah, exactly. So this now starts certainly adding up for people, for top talent coming out of different campuses and so on. And it's not just that, it's also an element of wealth creation. So as you kind of commit yourself to the organization building, to the growth of the organization, there's a certain innovative ways you figure out to kind of get some wealth generated. And that's the reason we are a for-profit entity. This was a conscious choice, right? If we are working in the impact space, why be a for-profit? You can be a not-for-profit company, right? Yeah. But that was a very conscious choice. And the single phrase answer to that is to be able to incentivize top talent. We need to be a for-profit.
So you were conscious about that from the beginning?
From the very beginning. It was a conscious choice at the time of registering, whether you want to be a not-for-profit or for-profit, what are the trade-offs there? And I think that if I were to do it again today, I'll still be a for-profit because of the reasons that I'm sharing.
You know, but it's very interesting. What you're saying is that if I join Samagra, then 70-80% जो मुझे एक top firm में मिलेगा, वो मुझे यहाँ पे मिलेगा. I get to work with the state government, central government. I get to see the impact of the work I have created on the lives of millions of people, and I have a high sense of ownership which I get over here.
This starts kind of adding up for people, and that's what is
important. Because today young people are actually, everyone is looking for this. But now we know that, okay, one place to look for all of us is Samagra. And do check them out, because you're getting all jo hota na checklist is happening over here and in a real way. What would you say as mental models, as frameworks, when people are building impact businesses, ki kyun unko for profit karna chahiye?
Well, I think, as I said, the main reason is talent. You cannot kind of scale without, or you cannot even solve problems without top quality talent. Now, you cannot expect everyone to be a Bhagat Singh, right? So you have to create a value proposition for that. Like it or not, one key element of that value proposition is financials, right? We'll have all the other things, but that's one thing that, and therefore you have to be able to compete on that one as well. And for that, a for-profit model helps. Also sustainability. right? The model has to be self-sustaining.
Yes,
The revenue
yes.
model, the financial model has to be self-sustaining.
Beyond the founder, beyond
Exactly. So from that perspective, also it's important that for the self-sustaining this thing, there's a revenue model in place, and then that can happen very well as a for-profit this thing. Otherwise, you're largely based on grants. So that's the second reason. I think one thing that at least is very close to our heart at Samagra, we want to really create a high-quality institution. So it's not about delivering some impact now, next year, in the next 5 years, and so on, but really after the current set of actors that are there, not just me, but even the other core team that we have, want the institution to sustain. And therefore, a lot of kind of effort goes into micro details to get the foundations right.
How do you see the governance in our country evolve? And I really want you to talk about, क्योंकि अभी हम COVID से हम सब निकले हैं.
So I am very optimistic about governance. I know a lot of people out there are naysayers and say कुछ नहीं हो सकता, but I am very optimistic, and the two reasons that give me hope. One is the aspirations of the society. I think we have that middle class, we have the lower middle class, which is really aspiring today, and that puts the pressure on the system to deliver.
Yeah.
So I think that is one. And second is the enabling role that technology can play. Yeah. I think that gives me a lot of hope. Technology is not a panacea, it's not a solution to everything, but it's the biggest, I would say, enabler to getting the governance puzzle right. And therefore at Samagra also, we focus a lot on what we call GovTech and data gov, governance technology and data in governance. And we house it in fact under an umbrella called Samagra X. It's a big part of what we're doing. So every piece of work, every transformation that we're doing with the government, increasingly year on year, there's a bigger and bigger role for technology and data. Why? Because two things. One is scale. Right? Everything that's happening is at scale, and therefore technology is what helps you kind of get quality, standardization, quality at scale. And second is sustainability. Anything that is tech-enabled is more likely to sustain than something that's purely based on human behavior, which is very difficult to change also. Right? So that gives me a lot of hope. And I can tell you, Shradha, that some of the things are very well known. Aadhaar, everyone knows the Aadhaar story. eKYC, how digital payments are happening, the direct benefit transfer are happening on account of Aadhaar, then UPI story, now COVID that you talked about. These are well-known things. But in every aspect of governance, in every aspect of life in some sense, there's a revolution right now that's underway through GovTech. We talk about health, there is something called an Ayushman Bharat digital mission where longitudinal health records are getting created, which you will be able to share. Once it kind of gets picked up, there's a network effect. When it gets created, you'll be able to share with any doctor for a specific purpose, specific period of time, your health records. In education, there's something called the National Digital Education Architecture, which has been conceptualized. It'll take time. It's not going to happen tomorrow. But over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see all of these things kind of play out in a very, very big way. This agri stack, which is kind of getting built on the agriculture front. All of these are enablers, as I'm saying. They're not the end in themselves, but they're huge enablers, and they're right now happening as we speak. In fact, GovTech is one place where India can show the path to the world. It's already doing that. There's a lot of interest in Aadhaar. There's a lot of interest in COVID. UPI is a global kind of success story. And as these things happen, I think, because there's no larger complexity anywhere in the world than what is in India. Right? There's no larger scale than what is in India. Exactly. Also. So if we can crack and solve for some of these things using technology here, then I think we have a lot to kind of support the world with and share with the world. So I think this is a story to watch out for.
Next 5 years, where do you see Samagra?
So firstly, before I talk about the forward, I think this milestone last December was very important for us, which was our 10th anniversary. Since last 3 years, we had been working backwards from this. It's actually luckily coincided with the 75 years of our independence. So we had said 3 years back that by the time we turn 10, we want to be quote unquote ready to make a meaningful contribution in the India at 75 to India at 100 journey. And like classical consultant, we said, okay, readiness means these experiences, this technology, this capability, this is warm up kar rahe the. And the tagline that we always had at Samagra, which we repeat internally, is that Rashtra Nirman ke yagya mein hamari bhi ek ahuti honi chahiye. So it's not the only, we are not the only ones who are contributing to nation building. A lot of people are coming together to make it happen. We want to have our own small yet meaningful contribution. एक आहुति हमारी भी होनी चाहिए. So that's what we've been working backwards from. Now we've gotten there. I think we're really looking at the next 25 years overall. As a country, I believe the India at 75 to India at 100 journey is extremely critical because for far too long we have had potential. Right now, it's time we kind of realize that potential into something tangible. And I think within the 25 years, the next 10 years are going to be very critical. We set the tone. We'll know in 10 years where we are getting there or not getting there. And our journey is tied to that. We want to kind of again contribute in a meaningful way in the India story, in the India journey. And therefore all the internal goals, we have a 3-year goal now. We've pegged it on 2025, Samagra 2025. And all of those goals are anchored around how much meaningful contribution can be, how many success stories of impact at scale across all of our work we can have. So it's all anchored around that.
I want to go back to one word you had used, कीड़ा, in the beginning. कीड़ा सबके पास होता है, हम सब impact करना चाहते हैं, हम सब we all want to do it, but more often than not we think that when we hit 40 plus के बाद करेंगे, और 20 के बाद करेंगे, या पता नहीं रिटायर होने के बाद करेंगे. Right now it's the कर्म भूमि, one has to make money and fend for family and get a stable job. उस कीड़े को मरने नहीं देना और रखना 10 साल तक, और ये इम्पैक्ट करना, और एक इंस्टीट्यूशन बनाना, और you've created a level playing field with top private firms and consulting firms, or ये, and that's why to me this is such a remarkable story and journey. वो कीड़ा अगर आज आपको देख रहे हैं यंग लोग, तो वो कैसे मेंटेन करें, बॉग डाउन नहीं हो, विक्टिम माइंडसेट पे नहीं हो कि मेरा तो EMI है, मेरे पास ये, मतलब वो रियलिटीज हैं, कैसे?
In our 10th anniversary event only, I was sharing one poem. I shared one poem which really captured that journey. Let me actually narrate that.
Please
here.
tell us.
This is by a poet called Ram Dashrath Mishra, हिंदी के कवि हैं, उनकी कविता है. So let me, it's called धीरे धीरे. So let me narrate that. बनाया है मैंने ये घर धीरे धीरे. Took 10 years to kind of this thing. बनाया है मैंने ये घर धीरे धीरे, खुले मेरे ख्वाबों के पर धीरे धीरे. किसी को गिराया न खुद को उछाला, किसी को गिराया न खुद को उछाला, कटा जिंदगी का सफर धीरे धीरे. जहां आप पहुंचे छलांगे लगाकर, दिस कुड बी सेड टू द स्टार्टअप वर्ल्ड टुडे, जहां आप पहुंचे छलांगे लगाकर, वहां मैं भी आया मगर धीरे धीरे. पहाड़ों की कोई चुनौती न थी. Nobody comes to you and say that prove that impact can be created or throw a challenge at you. That never happens, right? पहाड़ों की कोई चुनौती न थी, उठाता गया यूं ही सर धीरे धीरे. न हंसकर न रोकर किसी में उड़ेला, न हंसकर न रोकर किसी में उड़ेला, पिया खुद ही अपना जहर धीरे धीरे. गिरा मैं कहीं तो अकेले में रोया, गिरा मैं कहीं तो अकेले में रोया, गया दर्द से घाव घाव भर धीरे धीरे. जमी खेत की साथ लेकर चला था, जमी खेत की साथ लेकर चला था, उगा उसमें कोई शहर धीरे धीरे. एंड अंतिम में लास्ट है, मिला क्या है मुझको ए दुनिया तुम्हारी, मिला क्या है मुझको ए दुनिया तुम्हारी, मोहब्बत मिली मगर धीरे धीरे. So Biti, I think the larger message, Shradha, is patience. This one of the things that I see, a lot of good things happening around, but one of the things that I see is too much of impatience to get there quickly.
Yeah.
Kind of whatever is the mission, whatever is the goal, to get there quickly. अगले 2 साल में करना है, 3 साल में करना है. Some of the things take time. Yes. I can tell you in this space, in the space that we are operating in, things take time.
कभी कभी लगता है अरे आप स्लो हैं, आप आगे जल्दी नहीं बढ़ पाई और जल्दी नहीं कर पाई, but it's okay to take time, right?
Yeah, and good things take time.
Yes.
आपको कॉफी का टेस्ट तभी आएगा जो अच्छे से जो है होगी, right? तो वो
धीरे धीरे.
हाँ, धीरे धीरे, exactly. So some things, I'm not saying that ambition is important, right? Speed is important. Speed is a value at Samagra. But I'm saying some things take time, and
Yes.
if that requires patience. So that is one thing that I can say to the question that you asked. That be patient. Second is staying power. Third is again, I'm getting more tactical now, but very important I feel is thinking in the future, acting in the present. Right? Constantly think ahead, having a telescopic view, but you have to act now, which is a very microscopic thing to do. Right? You cannot be a dreamer only and start dreaming, and you cannot be got very tactical and just looking at it today, tomorrow, and the next month and forget about where you are heading and so on. There'll be situations dealing with adversity, right? So this is from Shiv Mangal Singh Suman. Again, he's been a famous Hindi poet.
Yeah.
तो उनकी लाइनें हैं, न हार में न जीत में, किंचित नहीं भयभीत में, संघर्ष पथ पर जो भी मिला ये भी सही वो भी सही. Right? So that attitude, that whatever is coming your way, that's fine. Just be at it. You're on a mission. Just keep kind of persevering. I think that attitude makes all the difference.
अगर समग्र के साथ मुझे जुड़ना है, and I want to join, I want to work, I want to partner, I want to do things, I have ideas, how can I collaborate, how can I join, what would you tell everyone?
No, it's not very complicated. I'll say 2 things, 2 reasons why you should join Samagra. Right? I think the first is a real opportunity to create impact at scale and contribute to nation building. Again, it's not PowerPoint impact, it's a real impact that touches the life of millions and millions of people through the work that you are doing, you can directly relate to what you are doing, translating into that outcome. So if nation building, if your heart beats for India, if you want to contribute to the India 75 to India 100 journey, then this is the place to be. It's not the only way you can create impact, but it's one of the more kind of, I would say, direct ways in which you can create impact. Second, if you want to have a steep learning curve, right? So as I'm saying, the nature of the work, the ownership levels, the coaching, mentoring process, I think it's a very, very steep learning curve. Now it sounds exciting. Everyone says I want to be on a steep learning curve, but it's not easy, because once you are at it, then on a daily basis, you are getting outside of your comfort zone, and that kind of creates a certain stress that can create anxiety, that can create various things. But the steep learning curve and contribution to nation building, that has to be the reason for joining Samagra. Everything else will get taken care of.
Yeah.
Everything else is also taken care of, let me put it that way. The bar is high. So I also want to say the bar, we keep a very high bar in terms of recruitment. So it's not easy.
I can imagine that.
But if both these things are there and you're kind of the right attitude, then
You headquartered in Delhi.
yeah, we are headquartered in Delhi. But since we work with the different state governments, so we have kind of our small setups in a Bhubaneswar, in a Lucknow, in a Shimla, in a Chandigarh, and so on. But we are based in Delhi. But large part of the team's time goes in the state capitals where they work.
So what is your definition of success?
Yeah, I think there are only two this thing. One, the reality of the impact, right? Genuine impact, because impact is something that it's a very misused word, right? Anything can be called impact, and you can talk about a lot of impact, but actual qualitative change in the lives of people, right? The mission that we have to improve the quality of life of people through better governance. So actual improvement in the quality of life of people at scale. If that is happening, continues to happen through our work, then then we are successful. Second is that we're creating an institution. It's not some ephemeral, short-term
project.
Right. Gaurav was there. Some core team members are there. इन लोगों ने मिलके कुछ कर दिया while they were there. But can it continue for decades and decades much after? Can Samagra exist 50 years from now? Right. So it will only exist if it's adding value. Right. That's the assumption. So that institution building and real impact, to me, these are the two mapdand of our success, or the measurement of our success.
Gaurav, what a privilege, what an honor, and so inspiring. I'm hoping this is start of our conversation and we will have more conversations because I'm sure everyone listening would agree with me that there's so much to take, so much to reflect, and so much to, really absorb when it comes to Samagra and the journey that you've made. Because जो मैं कह रही थी शुरू में, लोग बातें करते हैं but बहुत कम लोग आपके तरह धीरे धीरे चल लेते हैं और चलते रहते हैं. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Thank you. Pleasure talking to you, Shradha.